My name is Tom Fain. I'm today's senior judge, and my background is I'm a retired securities lawyer. I want to welcome all of you, especially under these circumstances. This is quite unusual. I'm sure it will not go off without a hitch, but if it does, we'll contend with it. I'm going to ask the judges now to introduce themselves, beginning with Nate.
Hi, good morning. I'm Nate Russell. I'm a senior manager for Raytheon Technologies. Good morning. You're welcome.
Next, alphabetically. Erin, you want to go?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Erin Griffin. I am a senior executive partner with Gartner, which is a research and technology company. I advise chief information officers.
Jason.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason West. I am the CEO of Synalysis Group, a marketing and consulting firm, of which I founded after very proudly graduating from Loyola Marymount University's College of Business Graduate School program about 5 years ago. Happy to be here for a third year in a row now. So,
Robert.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Robert Bittner. I'm a aerospace manager, international supplier, contract manager, and risk management and risk aversion specialist. I also advise tech startups, and happy to be here.
Okay, now we'll go to the team.
All right, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Okay, so good morning. I am Dalia Khnaiser. These are my colleagues Sharmin Rizallah and Faris Abu Shaheen. We are here to increase sustainability initiatives in the banking sector in Lebanon. Our topic is about gender equality and empowering all women and girls in the banking sector. Our organization is called UniWRights, that stands for Unified Women Rights. It's an NGO that actively seeks gender equality in the Lebanon. And the reason behind this initiative is the visible inequality between men and women within the workplace, and especially in the banking sector. Our mission is to reach unified rights between women and men. We will be addressing our issue to the Board of Directors of the ABL, the Association of Banks in Lebanon, who plays a very important role as a coordinator among banks in Lebanon. Here are some strengths for the ABL. In 2017, they joined the UN Global Compact, the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, and its SDGs are zero hunger, quality education, and of course, gender equality, our topic. The ABL assists banks in succession planning, compensation, and performance management programs. They also organize conferences, workshops, etc., for their employees to let them be motivated and etc. The most important Lebanese banks are all members in the ABL. Women in Lebanon do not acquire most of their rights, whether the woman is a parent, whether she's a wife, a citizen, or a qualified person for a job. For example, she can't open a bank account for her children or give her children the Lebanese nationality. All of these are due to political, social, and religious pressure. This is our presentation outline. First of all, we're going to talk about some background. Then we will present the ethical, legal, and financial problems of gender equality in the banking sector. And of course, UniWRights will suggest solutions for these issues.
Okay, so starting with a small history about Lebanon, we can see that in 1926, the Lebanese constitution states that all Lebanese citizens are equal before the law and they have equal rights without any differences between them. In 1953, women were accorded participation in politics. Around 1965, a law allowing women to work without the permission of her husband was issued, And as we all know, 8th March is the International Women's Day. In 1991, women are included in the parliament in Lebanon for the first time. In 1996, Lebanon approved the CEDAW. It's the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. However, in the late 80s, some of these laws were rejected, such as the Personal Status Law and the Nationality Rights. In 2018, a law issued punishing the crime of trafficking and a law protecting members from domestic violence was issued in 2014. And finally, a draft in 2017 law set the minimum age, marriage age at 18. However, it was not signed nor approved. Moving to the Lebanese HDI, it's the Human Development Index. We can see that Lebanon is ranked 93 out of 189 countries. We can see that the average is 0.731. For the Arab states is 0.703, and for Lebanon is 0.73 in 2018. So the more we are close to the average, the better it is. However, the HDI of Lebanon has increased from 0.59 in 1990 to 0.73, which is a good increase. For the life expectancy of births, we can see in the table below that in 1990, it was at 70.3 and it moved to 78.9. So it has increased by 8.6 years in this period. Moving to the gross national income, it has increased by 63.9%. And so we can say for the HDI that people are living longer, they are having better level of education, and they are having better livelihood opportunities. For the Lebanese GII, so it's the Gender Inequality Index, we can see that the average is at 0.439. And for the Arab states, we can see it in the first column in the table, it's 0.531. For Lebanon, it is 0.362. So it's placed between Jordan and Kuwait. So it is below Jordan and above Kuwait. So we are ranked 79 out of 162 countries in 2018. Moving to the female seats in parliament, for Lebanon, it is 4.7%. So it is really a small, low percentage compared to their occupation in parliamentary seats. For women, they are reaching 54.3% in at least some secondary education school, compared to men with 55.6%. So it is almost the same percentage. They are having equal level of education. However, moving to the labor force participation, we can see here a huge gap between the participation of women at the workplace and men. We can see that for the female, it is 23.5%. However, for the male, it's 70.9%. So for the GII, we can conclude that there's a lot of improvement to do to ameliorate the achievements of women and men in that field. Okay, so going straight into the banking sector, we can see in this table the distribution of banks employee in 2017 divided by gender and by age. By gender and age. So we can see in the range of employees above 40 years that they are more dominated by males. So mainly it constitutes 40% of the total number. And here in this position, mainly it's a managerial position. So we can say that the managerial positions are more dominated by male in that range. Moving to the range of the employees under 25 years, we can see that the percentage of female is higher than male. It is 60.4%. However, for the male, it's 39.6%. And for this range, mainly it is an entry-level position. So women, which constitute 8%, I'm sorry, the total number is 26,005, so it's 8% of this total number. So women are more occupying this position, the entry-level position, than men. And finally, for the range of 25 years to 40 years employee, we can say that they are almost, the percentage is almost the same, and in this position is in between the entry level and the managerial position.
First, we're going to discuss about ethical problems. Many facts place the employees in susceptible aspects with their workplace, such as their well-being, their job title and description, their remuneration, and gender equality. Nowadays, banks' clients appreciate more and have extra loyalty and trust in the banks with integrating the CSR in their strategy because they feel like they are in its development. So this can attract more clients, so more profits. Now for the financial problems, banks are facing many problems in different aspects regarding gender equality, such as the lack of legal laws and regulations that are not being controlled nor applicable, and the lack of women occupying managerial positions. As we are going to see, a problem with IBES Bank, one of the top 3 banks in Lebanon. From 2014 till 2018, only 35% of managerial positions were occupied by women, comparing to 65% occupied by men. This is why this bank is facing problems with decisions making, say the head of retail banking in this bank. And for another problem, the point of views, banks need to have different point of views, and integrating women in the workplace can help that matter, because women can come up with innovative ideas. We're going to take the example of the head of retail department in Blom Bank, who's also listed one of the top 3 banks in Lebanon, and she's a woman. In fact, recruiting a woman for a managerial position will cost approximately 80 million Lebanese pounds nowadays, the equivalent of $50,000 US. However, she will so we're going to take as we said, the example of Blom Bank. In fact, recruiting a woman for managerial position will cost, as I say, 80 million Lebanese pounds, the equivalent of $50,000 US. So concerning the head of retail banking in Blom Bank, she's a very innovative and multi-task Lebanese woman. She's leading the bank's digitalization journey and successfully overseeing several problems in its retail banking. Under her leadership, the retail lending portfolio constitutes around 50% of the total bank's loan portfolio and contributes 25% of the bank's yearly profits. In 2017, the bank grew its assets by 10.2% and deposits by 11.8%. The operating revenue grew almost 16% from 2013 to 2017, despite the challenging economic conditions in Lebanon. The cost of our solution, the average annual cost of bank employee reached around 76.8 million Lebanese pounds in 2017, so 6.5 million per month Lebanese pounds. Obviously, the salary level and the amount of allowances differ from one employee to another according to several criteria, such as ranking, seniority, level of education, family status, gender, bank policy on salaries, and bank category and size. For the legal problems, women represent in Lebanon 52% of the Lebanese demography compared to men, who represent 48%, knowing that the number of women are higher than men in Lebanon. So banks are missing a lot of opportunities because women can't open bank accounts for their children under their name because the Lebanese culture is patriarchal. This will cost many losses upon banks. Example, divorced women or widows. So if a widow wants to open a bank account for her children, the person who should sign the bank's papers must be the brother of her dead husband or his father. And if both are dead, then she's allowed to sign the papers. There is no applicable official law that states that both genders should get the same salary. This is why changing some laws and regulating them will boost banks' profitability.
All right, so after we talked about the many problems that banks are facing nowadays, the Lebanese banks' problems that are ethical, legal, and financial, UniWRights will suggest solutions that are also ethical, financial, and legal. So starting with the ethical solutions, UniWRights will suggest to the ABL training programs for the HR department, such as not asking the candidates about their previous salary if they are applying to the same position, and give them the same remuneration. They should also disregard the gender while recruiting candidates, and be generous with parental leave and flexible schedules. This increases the motivation of the employees and their well-being, which will lead to higher profitability. Gender equality, as we all know, takes part in the CSR. Banks put all their efforts into the CSR because it's highly appreciated by the community. And according to banks, the CSR is not only a theory, but they are very determined. They apply it because it reinforces the bank's image, its values, and the relationship with the clients, and it increases the bank's number of clients and the relationship with the bank's employees. So gender equality is an added value to the bank, and of course that will lead to higher profits. So UniWRights will make sure that the ABL is applying all actions from 2020 till 2025 for all Lebanese banks, because as we said in the previous slides, the ABL is now a part of the UN Global Compact. And this is to take actions and more actions regarding their SDGs. And UniWRights will host conferences and seminars to all bank employees and directors, and to communicate the importance of gender equality in Lebanon, and more especially in the banking sector. Now, moving to the financial solutions, there's a saying by McKinsey that says, the most gender diverse companies are 21% more likely to experience above average profitability. This is why gender equality in banks will generate different points of views, and of course, innovative ideas, and that will lead to better problem solving and better decision making. This will strengthen the relationship between employees and their clients, and the client's loyalty towards the bank. Clients will therefore deposit more money, open more bank accounts, and of course do more services regarding the bank, and that will lead to higher profits. It will generate, of course, higher profits. Also, banks will have access to info and the sources of credit and a diverse customer base and shareholders. So we're going to take the example of a bank in Lebanon called BLF. It's one of the top 5 most imported banks in Lebanon. So according to BLF, having women within the workplace is very essential to the bank, because 49% of the bank's staff are women, and profits increased by 16.6% from 2014 till 2018. And 57% of women at BLF occupy managerial positions. As you can see in the graphs below, we can see the total loans, the total customers deposit, and the net income of the BLF bank. From 2014 till 2018, we can see that these numbers have increased. And of course, we are not going to take into consideration the year 2019, because as you all know, Lebanon right now is going through a very hard time, facing many problems, economical and financial problems. This is why we can see that the total loans and the deposits and the net income have directly decreased from 2018 till 2019. So this is a very major issue for the banks. but we can say that from 2014 till 2018, total loans, customer deposits, and the net income have very well increased. So banks should recruit women for the assistant branch manager position, because after we talked with the head of retail department in Byblos Bank, one of the top 5 most important also banks in Lebanon. These women are more, this position is most likely to get promoted to a branch manager. This is why women are mainly generating profits for the bank. UniWRights will also propose to the ABL to apply on banks a 20% penalty for banks who do not respect equal pay for both men and women.
Concerning the last legal solutions and suggestions, UniWRights should suggest to the ABL new law that ban employers from discriminating employees on the basis of sex, race, color, national origin, and religion. Concerning the law that states that women cannot open a bank account to their children under their names and sign official papers, they should be allowed to do so. And the ABL should act as a lobbying group to put pressure on the syndicate of banks before signing the collective labor agreement, for example, of 2021 and 2022. And we will suggest putting in place an audit team to control the gender pay gap of the employees occupying the same position, to provide more transparency and to act on it. For example, they can publicize the salaries of the employees to show them that they are equal between them, and this will motivate them and will increase their profitability and their productivity, and their performance. Finally, we thought of a small implementation plan so we will ensure condensed information about the impact of women in decision making. Because in Lebanon, it is rare to find some studies that shows how a woman can impact on the profitability. So first of all, we will recruit women in managerial positions in the branches that surround Beyrouth. Why surrounding Beyrouth? As you can see on the right in the geographical distribution, mainly the branches are more focused in Beyrouth, and the rest are the surroundings. And we noticed that that there's a lack of women in the surroundings of Beirut. This is the reason why we chose recruiting women there, to have more accurate and specific analysis on this action. And so we will implement the different solutions that we suggested to assess them upon 3 years, and to observe the evolution and take actions upon them, so we can see how really women can have an impact on the profitability of the bank while occupying managerial positions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, we now have a, excuse me, we now have a period of questions and answers.
Yes.
I'm asked to lead off and then turn it over to the other judges for their questions.
All right, so should I stop my screen sharing?
Say it again, please.
Should I stop my screen sharing, or I
Yes,
keep it like
that's probably a good idea, thank you.
All right.
So I'm asked to lead off with a question, and my first question is really outside the corners of your presentation. In looking at the charts that you first introduced, it appears that this problem is one of long standing, which has been getting better in recent years as the population of women increases statistically. A two-part question is, why is that? Why has it been increasing? And what might you recommend doing to increase it further? Anybody can take that.
All right, so I think the percentage of women in the labor market, not only in banks, is increasing because there is more awareness that women and men are equal. And in Lebanon, we're having a lot of campaigns, a lot of, if you want, motivational sayings for women that she is equal to men, and everything related to women empowering and gender equality. For example, when we had the we were having the Lebanese revolution in these past few months, the women were taking a huge part into this revolution, and we used to have march for sexual harassment, for women empowering, and etc. So I guess if we put the focus on this major topic, and if you sensibilize the people that women and men are equal, that will make women be more integrated into the Lebanese labor force and income generating activities, and of course that will generate more profits for the bank or any other corporation.
Jason, you have any questions?
I do. And I'm going to kind of piggyback off a question that you introduced there, Tom, because as the scope of this presentation focused on banking, and there are some incremental shifts, if you will, of improvements, I always like to think, what do you foresee happening if you didn't do anything in the banking sector? Is it enough to witness those incremental shifts, or are there other industry verticals that you might perhaps partner with in order to build an even greater momentum beyond only banking?
Anybody going to take this one?
Can you please rephrase your question, because the connection wasn't very, it was cutting a bit. I didn't really get what you were saying.
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right? As far as the...
Yes, we can hear you, but I didn't really understand what you meant in the question.
Okay, I'll rephrase a bit if I may here. Your presentation focused solely on the banking sector, and as Tom, I'm going to borrow a little bit of what he had on his mind because it was on my mind as well. We saw with your presentation was rich with data points, and I appreciate the data points and the improvements that we see in the banking sector. What if we didn't do anything? I always like to play devil's advocate and see, what is your perspective if we just didn't act on what you presented here? Is it enough to see that shift of those incremental changes, or what do you anticipate happening if we didn't do anything? In your research brief, you know, Lebanon is listed as 145 out of 183. What is that true risk for not doing anything? Will you become last place as a country?
Yes, of course, if we don't take actions on it, maybe the number of women can decrease if we don't take measures or include her in decision making, and this can mainly have an impact on maybe the profitability of the bank, because we can see that the more the bank is diversified, the more the environment is the more the well-being is ensured in the bank, the more the profitability will increase, and they will and we can see that women can really have an impact in this. And if we don't act on it, and we don't proceed with awareness and put some pressure on banks to include, for example, women in decision makings, and because we are really patriarchal, so mainly the high salaries are mostly generated for men, not women, because he is responsible of generating money for the family, and it's a necessity. So they will more recruit men than women if they have the same profile, for example, or a less lower background or profile. So they will go for men, not women, if we don't continue and work on this awareness.
And I have a second part to that question.
Yes.
On one of your slides, you mentioned to really have that impact is to bring women into the fold of more of the associate branch manager positions. Why not a more senior level position? Why not further elevate the visibility of female in leadership roles beyond what I interpret as an associate level is more junior than what you're perhaps aspiring for with this equality movement?
Sorry, excuse me, I want to add some information about your last question. We can say that the Lebanese economy is based on the banking sector. So as we say before, with the example of BLF Bank, when you have an extra extra percentage of women in managerial positions, they have extra profits. So this also will affect or will have an impact on the economic of the country, not only in the banking sector.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, how about you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I appreciate the stats and the information. You did talk about BLF Bank and outlined, how profitable they were due to you attributed it to the women in leadership, and I think I want to poke at that. And do we think it was because of the women, or was there something else underlying, maybe due to training, or were the increases just solely because of women in positions? Is there something more you can add to that to show?
All right, so speaking about the BLF Bank, yes, we saw that from 2014 till 2018, the numbers have really increased. It's not only due to women, of course, but women take a huge part into this increase because, as we said before, banks were facing many problems related to decision making and different points of views and etc. because most of them are not very gender diversified. So yes, women do take a huge part into this profitability increase. And answering the previous question about the assistant branch manager, we realized after interviewing to the head of retail department in Byblos Bank that the assistant branch manager position is mainly occupied by women, and this specific position is most likely to get promoted to a branch manager, and this is how women are being more integrated into the banking sector and into mainly all banks in Lebanon. And yeah, that's basically it.
Robert, how about you?
Yeah, actually, let me just do two things. One of your early charts showed some of the attempted progress made over the recent decade or two to provide laws that would enforce equality. And it seems like some of those decisions have failed primarily because of the strength of religious courts and all the different religious sects that exist within the country. I think if we were to partake in your recommendations, there's certainly, my biggest concern is my return on investment, or what is my cost benefit ratio. And so I'm concerned that if we start to go down this path there and say legal issues emerge, people simply don't act as we need them to. I'm concerned that we don't have any legal backing, because it'll fall back to what you highlighted in your time chart of religious courts saying, well, we're not going to enforce that. Can you comment?
The ABL, before changing or signing any law, they discuss these laws with the syndicates, and this is why we mentioned that they can act as groups of lobbying to put pressure on the syndicate, so they can maybe change or modify some law to show them and to aware them that there is some improvements in and some rights that employees should get to have gender equality between them, because nowadays, as we already said, everyone is aware about gender equality, and everyone wants their rights. So if they can really communicate and put pressure on them to let them know the importance of this field, the legal field in it, maybe they can modify some laws and act on them.
Aaron, it's no accident that I saved you for last. I recognize that
Tom?
you're a woman and you will probably have the solution to this problem.
Tom,
Yeah.
if I may, I do have one other brief question I'd like to ask.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The other thing, again, concerned about cost benefit of what you're asking us to do. I noticed you recommended going into the Beyrouth proper market as the first test market, but that's 53% of our total market in the country. Why not start in a smaller market, one or two smaller markets, and assess the progress there first before taking on such a large sector?
Because it's due to the country, the whole country, the religious problems. We focused on Beirut because it's a multiple city with a lot of people. If you're going to take like a smaller market, maybe we can go to multiple villages in Lebanon. But the fact of the religion and the main lack of reasonable things that women can be put in a managerial position, maybe we'll have a lot of problems in this regarding this market. For example, if you go to the north of Lebanon, you can see, or basically, you know, there's a man. The men are a lot more in managerial positions from women because of this fact. So that's why we took Beirut, a marketplace to
Okay, so therefore what you're saying is, comes back to my first question, that you have less possibility of dealing with things that have resulted in past failures in law enforcement, in what you're implying is a more open-minded and modern Beirut
Yes.
proper than going into the
Yes.
smaller areas.
Yes.
Okay.
People in Beirut are more open-minded than other regions.
Okay.
Okay, now, Aaron, you ready?
Already. And I will say, first of all, congratulations on such an interesting presentation. As we on the board of ABL are all men, I realize it must be challenging for you to come forward to us with such a proposition. So I encourage your continued courage. I also will point out that, as you can see, it is still difficult for women in many cultures to have their voices heard as robustly as men. So we all are working this battle every day in every culture. I am more specifically interested in how you're going to do two things. One, how you're going to fund your plan, and two, how you're going to be able to obtain the data necessary to demonstrate the outcomes that you're anticipating. Should I rephrase that?
I think that I understand what you meant. We can get now. First of all, Lebanon is getting in really is in crisis in the banking sector, so they cannot fund themselves. So we will go we will have some funds and NGOs that we will be working on this to try to realize all our solutions. However, our cost is not we are not the cost is really is compensated by all the profits that a woman can do if we are recruiting new women in managerial positions. This is why we can say that our cost is directly covered. So we are not having we don't have a budget, a big budget to implement.
So then you'll be expecting the banks to fund your project, and they will.
No, some NGOs. Some NGOs will help us to, for example, come up with some training sessions, some recruitment sessions for the HR departments, etc. And concerning the when we can recruit women in managerial position, so the cost is afterwards compensated by the profits maybe that it can generate.
Okay, we're now asked to give you some feedback. There's a lot of feedback embedded in the questions, so I'm not sure anybody has anything in addition. I have one small item. We have some technical issues here. Occasionally, it was difficult to hear some of you. So I would say that you should take a part of the intermission and work on these technical difficulties. That was particularly noticeable with Faris. There were times when I just couldn't hear you. Anybody else with feedback?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a small connection problem.
That's okay. It's just something for you to think about and work on.
I have a few points.
Go.
I mentioned earlier that I geek out. I love the data points, and I appreciate the research that you put into the presentation to share so many historical and current perspectives, data points on those. I would encourage you to perhaps highlight more of those key takeaways on your presentation. Call out boxes with color boxes that will really bring one's eye into what is that key takeaway? What's that main point that you want to share with us from all of this data? One data point in particular, I would be cautious of saying the women were a little bit larger. I think it was a 50.3 versus 49.7. Not so statistically significant that one would be higher than the other on the under 25 bracket. So that is closer to another equal. So you might need to reevaluate that position on how that impacts what your story is there. Really liked the logo. I had a note on that. I don't know who designed the logo, but I liked the female incorporation into your imagery there. Good work there. Anybody else?
I will tag on a little bit to what Jason is saying. This is a storytelling exercise, and you're telling a story that needs to be very meaningful. And part of the challenge with the data is I wanted you to continue to tie it back to the meaning behind the data. So when you tell me these numbers, how does that compare to the rest of society? How does that compare to the rest of business in Lebanon? How does that compare to the growth rates of other industries in Lebanon? So doing comparisons is helpful to understand why the data is meaningful. And secondly, bringing a human face to your story can be a very compelling way to get people to care. You want these very important banker guys, you want them to hear your data, but you want them to care about your data. So thinking about ways to bring a human face to your story can be a very compelling thing.
Nate, you have anything you want to add before we close up?
Yeah,
We'll get you.
I do, if I may. So don't want to overstate this, but yeah, I found myself on some of your charts. You had so much contextual information. I found myself trying to keep up and read it, and not necessarily hearing you. So that goes back to Jason's comment about simpler charts. You can have more detailed backup information. Sometimes taking numbers and putting them into a graph or a chart markets far better than a bunch of numericals. And it allows the audience to interpret and then continue to listen to you far better. There were a couple of subtleties. You went between Lebanese dollars and US dollars at different ports. I would make the currency consistent if you could through the presentation. And I'm just going to briefly add, my daughter attended Lebanese American University. When Dr. Jabra took over the presidency, she specifically attended the Institute for Women's Studies there. So yeah, that's why I asked the question I did. I'm very, very familiar with some of the issues that are over there. And I think you guys overall really tried to drive home what is so different about business in Lebanon versus business here in the United States where we live, and what some of the issues are. So on that light, I think you guys did well.
Nate, you want to finish for us?
I think the panel really had some really great insight, and I appreciate the history and the story behind it. And I don't think I have anything that could really bring out besides what the panel did. But well done. Thanks.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for your participation and for the contestants. We'll see you again.